Good morning, this is Marty Vint. Today I'd like to talk to you about using the fill function in Creative Studio. Fill provides a method of putting a design inside of a boundary or outside of a boundary or between two boundaries. And let me demonstrate exactly how this works. First of all, I'm on my CAD screen and I'm working in standalone mode. My grid size is 5 inches. I made that so it would be easy for me to draw a boundary. And I am going to draw boundary. And I'm going to simply put on my G for grid point snap and click every other block. Then I right click and there's my boundary, and I right click again on the CAD screen to escape that function. There I have drawn quickly a 10-inch block. In my computer settings, I keep my reference point as center, as you can see here. That makes it easier when I'm placing things on my CAD screen. So I'm going to use a pattern that is specifically designed as a fill pattern. I'll use my pearl in a clam fill, and I'm going to simply place that on the CAD screen using my repeat patterns. Notice how my reference point is center again, and I click OK. And there is this very large, very dense pattern, and you notice that it is centered around the border box that I had drawn earlier. Now I'm going to select that, and I'm going to use my orange handles, which will leave the center exactly where it is, but I can now resize this pattern however I want. I'm going to make it a little bit less dense. This design is really made to have an applique or a shape in the middle of it. You see how it has that hole in the middle? Although it's not unattractive, I think I'll move that hole so that it's outside of the area. The reason this is a fill design is it is designed in small sections that move out, over, and in to minimize the impact of drawing over when I have filled my design. I have to click off of the repeat pattern box now to make my icons available, and I'm going to click fill inside. Now note that this is a very dense pattern and it will take a few minutes for it to work. Actually, that was pretty quick. And you can see that now the area inside of my boundary is filled, and if we clicked on F2, we could follow the stitching lines. It's always a good idea when you have made a fill pattern to check on the stitching lines to make sure there are not a lot of dense stitch overs on the sides. I'm going to escape that. And now I'm going to click Control Z to bring back my pattern. Now I'm going to show you how to fill outside of a boundary. First, you have to select your boundary so that it turns red. You may either use the fill outside icon, and I also have to select my pattern, icon, or you can right click and use the drop down menu and go to fill outside. And there you see we have removed all of the pattern that is inside of an area. The final method of fill is to fill between two boundaries. Let me demonstrate how you do that. So I'm going to, for this purpose, simply click on Control Z, which returns my whole pattern, and I'm going to just move my pattern for the purposes of this demonstration to the side. Now I'm going to select an applique shape, and I'm going to use this G Daisy Flower single, which I've divided from the G Daisy border. And I'm going to simply click on Transfer Pattern to Boundary. And there my flower is perfectly centered inside of my boundary. Now that's a pretty big flower and I want to demonstrate fill, so I think I'm going to make that that flower just a little smaller. And if I use my orange handles, you notice how my center stays exactly on the center of the block. The most effective way to do fill between is first to echo a pattern. So I'm going to right click on my daisy and I'm going to echo the pattern, but I'm going to make it a very small echo. I'm going to make it 0.1 and place the echo pattern. Now you see how I have a solid line around my shape. I can resize that if I wish to make it almost exactly on the flower. If I want to have my fill go almost exactly to the flower, although you have to remember there is going to be some shrinkage, so it's probably a good idea to leave a little space, and you can play with that as you stitch. I would definitely practice that. Or you can make it a little larger, and this is kind of interesting because if I had echoed at 1/4 of an inch, it would have been a more even spacing, but I rather like the effect of this uneven echo line around the flower. Okay, so now I'm going to select that echo and I am going to simply convert it into a boundary. So now I have two boundaries. I have an inside boundary and an outside boundary. And I am going to put my fill pattern over top of this entire area, and I'm going to roughly center it. I have to scroll in here to see. Yes, there we go. And now the icon we want to use is fill inside, or right click fill inside, which is the whole sunshine. And again, this will take a few minutes. It's a very dense pattern. And there you have it. If we want to, we can do an F2, a virtual stitch out, to check and make sure we're happy with the way that it stitches. And what I do usually is stitch my fill first. And then if I want to stitch that echo line, I convert that echo line back to a pattern. And I make sure I use my crosshairs to make sure I don't have to adjust it at all, but I make any adjustments. Again, remember when you're using the fill function, you are creating a new pattern, different from trim, which is simply removing, for the purposes of stitching, a portion of a pattern. Remember, there's a lot of fun things you can do with fill. Let me just show you a few things that I've done here. Here I used a different fill design around the same flower, and I flipped the second fill. You get an idea how the lines kind of look interesting. So if you were doing a whole quilt with a lot of blocks, that might be a lot of fun to do. Here I filled around a basket, and in fact the flowers are fill as well. I just placed 3 flowers on the CAD screen and I used fill outside and I came up with this design. Any questions, feel free to contact me at www.marniequilts.com, and I look forward to sharing more with you soon. Thank you.